Good afternoon, welcome back to another Coastie Explores, and I've come across a German theme pub here on Ma Wan Island in Hong Kong, and that made me think about the rich German history that we have here, not only in Hong Kong but in northern China, in the city of Qingdao. In 1898 the Chinese forcibly had to sign a lease to the Germans for 99 years. So I'm fascinated to see, are the old houses and buildings of the German era still there? Let's head up to Qingdao and find out. So you're thinking, how on earth did Germany, of all countries, have a piece of China in the late 19th century? Well, it all started with the scramble for China for concessions following the Second Opium War in 1860. Germany had sent ships up to survey the area. That, of course, was Prussia at the time, because German unification took place in 1871 under Bismarck. Now, in 1897, with Kaiser Wilhelm on the throne, they decided they wanted a place in the sun, a Heimat, a German home away from home. And following the death of two missionaries in Shandong Province here, Germany forced their way in with their warships and negotiated a lease for 99 years on this plot of land all around Jiaojiao Bay. Before that, it was purely a little fishing village just on the edge of the bay, and there's only two buildings, as far as I know, that were here before, and that is this one here, the Huilan Pavilion, a famous building here in Qingdao at the end of this wonderfully long pier, and also the Temple of Heaven over there, that both predate the Germans. Right, it's time to have a little walk around old German Qingdao to see what architecture and remnants there are of the Germans being here. Let's go. Lots of touristy things to do here by the pier. You have got a Ferrari speedboat there, where you can take it round to different parts of the peninsulas here. And you've also got the Naval Museum, a rather impressive Chinese Naval Museum in the background. So do check out that if you're in Qingdao. And our first old building today is the magnificent old railway station here, built in 1901, just a few years after the Germans arrived. This line connected with the mainland up in Jinan, a small city further to the north of here. That would have been on the Trans-Siberian Express. Now, the Germans had the rail rights to the whole of the province, so when Britain leased Weihai, a small city 2 hours northeast of here, they weren't allowed to build any railways. It was only the Germans. So a beautiful clock tower on top. It's just about to chime 9 o'clock. I wonder if it does chime. This is the old station, and right next to it is the new station, built in the same design, and we'll talk about why they did that later. Now, classic here, we've got the German red roofs. We're going to see those all over the city today, the red tiles, generally with the yellowish colour, so many of the buildings today will have that yellow tint to the walls. Most of the buildings are made out of granite here, because there was a quarry about 2-3 kilometres east of here in Lushan Mountain. So we're going to see granite up to a certain point and then brick above it. Right, let's carry on our tour to see what else we have here in the old city of Qingdao. Now, right behind me, I've stumbled across the Naval Battalion building. This was built in 1899, putting it at one of the oldest buildings, I'd say, here in Qingdao. Now, this was used as the headquarters for the 2nd Naval Battalion. It was actually unique because this was the only colony of Germany that was run by the Navy and not the colonial government. So the Navy ran it, certainly for those first few years. This is where the generals and admirals and whatever would have been, but if we go into the city a little bit more, we can see where the able seamen would have spent their time, at the seaman's house. Let's go. And here is the old seaman's house, the sailor's home. We used to have one in Hong Kong, in Sai Ying Pun. This is where sailors some would live here, but this is their club where they would party. And it was the first to show cinema here in Qingdao in 1907, I believe. Not the first in China, that was Shanghai in 1896. Linked to the church as well. In fact, the one in Hong Kong in Sai Ying Pun had a sailors' church right next to it. But yeah, up to around 2,000 troops from Germany of the Navy here at any one time. Right, let's crack on. And right on the waterfront here is the old German club, where all the German nationals would have come here for wining, dining, dancing, fun, bands back in the day, and this is where they would have all gathered. What a wonderful Qingdao Brewery horse here. Just a reminder that this is still very much a big brewing town here in China. And right behind me here is the home of the former German consulate here. Now, presumably this would have been post-German era, because you wouldn't have had a consulate here whilst the Germans were in place. So presumably this building from the 1930s, 1940s. And just 2 doors down from the consulate is this building, former home to one of the leading priests here in Qingdao. Definitely seen better days, and this was built in 1914, just as the Japanese were invading and took Qingdao from the Germans. So probably one of the last buildings here in Qingdao to be built by the Germans. So I can hear you thinking, if it was on a 99-year lease in 1898, why was it not handed back to China like Hong Kong was in 1997? And that's because the World War I came along and Japan were allied with Britain, and between them they invaded this part of China in 1914, thus kicking the Germans out of Qingdao. Most were repatriated back to Germany, and then following the Treaty of Versailles after the war, this peninsula was given to Japan to govern, which they did until 1922, then returning to Chinese hands. So there we go, that's why it was only a German colony for, 16 years. And as if by magic, look, a German brewery. Let's go in and take a look. And we've made it inside, and there it is, the famous Tsingtao Brewery. Now, do get here earlier in the day. I've just come back later, but do book early, and if it's a bank holiday or a holiday, make sure you book days in advance to get in here, because it is chock-a-block. Right, let's have a little walk around and find out a little bit of history about the Tsingtao Brewery. Tsingtao Brewery was founded in 1903 by the Anglo-German Brewery Company Limited. The first beer was brewed and served in December 1904, crafted by German master brewers using local water from the Laoshan mountain springs. During World War I, Japan seized the German colony of Qingdao. In 1916, the brewery was sold at auction to the Dai Nippon Brewery Company of Tokyo, which operated it for the next 3 decades. Following World War II, Tsingtao grew into China's most prominent beer brand and a major exporter to international markets. Today, this historic legacy continues not only through its global presence, but also in local Qingdao traditions, where fresh, unpasteurized draft Tsingtao is often served in plastic bags with a straw as a popular and convenient takeaway style. As we know, every good fortification needs a water source and a well, and so does a brewery, and this is one of the 4 wells that you can find here at the Qingdao Brewery Museum. There is the famous logo for Tsingtao beer, and it's the Huilan Pavilion that we were at earlier this morning. And there we go. Apparently, this beer is only drinkable, preserved for 24 hours. So it's got to be drunk. So let's go ahead and taste it. That is what they literally call fresh beer. Cheers. Right, let's continue around the city. Now, in the late 1890s, when the Germans started to plan out this area, this was very much the German area. And in 1900, actually, Chinese were banned from coming to this area. You had to have some sort of permit because you worked here, or that you were delivering something if you were Chinese and wanting to come to this area. Certainly after dark, you had to have a lantern and a special reason as to why you were in this area. Now, this was a segregated society, so the Chinese lived in their own communities on the outside and the Germans were here. Very similar to Hong Kong in a way. In fact, Hong Kong copied the Germans here in 1904-05 when the peak ordinance came in, where only British people or Western people were allowed to be and live on the peak. So that's something that the British in Hong Kong got from here in Qingdao. And undoubtedly the most iconic place is this. It's St. Michael's Cathedral here in an old German style square in the centre of old city Qingdao. Now, this was built in 1934, and I hear you say, Kosti, that's post-German. So what is a German cathedral doing that was built in 1934 when the Germans left in 1914? Well, this was built as a muster colony by the German. That is a model colony. So everything was thrown into this city, from the architecture, the urban planning, the sewer system, everything. And when Sun Yat-sen visited in 1912, he saw this as almost like a blueprint for what Chinese cities should look like. We jump forward to when the Japanese relinquished Qingdao in 1922 following the Washington Naval Conference. It was handed back to China, and then Germans were welcomed back to continue planning out the city, and pretty much most of the German looking buildings that you see today are actually post-German era and built in the 1920s, 30s and even later. And it's very, very hard to see which ones are actually pre and which ones are post-German colony. You have to look on the plaque on each of the buildings to find out exactly what year. But a magnificent building. Let's go in and take a look. What a beautiful interior to this Catholic cathedral here. There is another church here, the Christian church. We will go to that in a second. But this is the Catholic church, and missionaries have been in China since probably the 1850s, 1860s onwards. And it was the killing of the two missionaries, German missionaries, in 1897 that led to German forcibly taking Qingdao. We can see confession boxes over here, famous in the Catholic religion, where you would confess your sins to the priest here. It did stop, I think, during the Japanese occupation, and then in the 1950s, 60s, it ceased operating and then was revitalised back in the 1980s, and you can still come to have services here today. So, what a wonderful building this is. Now, what do you think this building was back in the day? 1904 it was built, but this was the old police station here in Qingdao. And I don't know too much about policing here in Qingdao, but if it's anything like Hong Kong, then it would have been German officials at the top as the chief inspectors and superintendents, and then below them would have been Chinese policemen, just as it was in Weihai and Hong Kong. In fact, Britain brought officers down from Shandong Province, from Weihai and further afield in the province, because they are statistically the tallest and strongest people in China, apparently. And if you are looking for a Chinese wife or girlfriend, Chinese women are the tallest here in Shandong Province. So get yourself to Shandong for many different reasons. And of course, with a big police station comes a large prison. Now this one is located probably a kilometre away, built almost like a castle, a German castle, and life was tough here for Chinese. Any slipping with the law and they were dealt with harshly. I've just been around the exhibition hall, and some of the photos of the way the prisoners were treated here was terrible by the Germans, but also that continued under the Japanese as well. Right, let's have a little look around. It seems that this block was mainly for German soldiers, and you can actually tell they were probably treated a bit better because we can see a grill here with actual heating. You'd have had a wood burning stove kind of thing in there to heat up the cells, because this place was bitterly cold in the winter months. As you come down to the basement here, this is where the torture took place of citizens. We've got the Japanese arraignment room and various different torture devices. Certainly no heating down here, so this was the last place you'd want to be ending up if you were a prisoner here.
This is the old German Imperial Post Office building in Qingdao, where the government used the Mexican silver dollar as its official currency to facilitate regional trade, alongside banknotes from the German East Asian Bank. Correspondingly, the colony operated its own postal service, which issued distinct German postage stamps overprinted with China for use within the territory.
Well, one building that predates the Germans is this. This is the wonderful Temple of Heaven here in the centre. And this was built in 1467 in the Ming Dynasty, so over 500 years old, and still a spectacular place to visit. It's free to get in, and there's even a little recreation going on down the path there. And right behind this wall is the Qingdao Experimental Primary School, built in 1901. Now, presumably this would have been for the children of German people here living in Qingdao. Schooling was very much segregated back in the early 1900s here, and I believe this is one of the first schools that was set up by the Germans for the German children here. Even in the old town here, we've got some subway lines, and what a beautiful building to put a subway line in. I presume this was built around 2015 when the subway was being built here in Qingdao, and just goes to show that even later on in recent years they're still building things in and around the city in the German architectural style to fit in with the old style. And check this spectacle out. This is the Qingdao Christian Church as opposed to the Catholic Cathedral in the centre. Got lots and lots of granite here. This was mined just east of here in Laoshan. And then we've got the classic yellow building with the red German tiled roofs. And then we've got the copper bell tower at the top with clocks on two sides. And it still chimes on the hour every hour. And it would have had wonderful views looking out over the bay, so everyone in Qingdao would have known what time it was and when to come to church on a Sunday morning, which they do still have a service here. Went up to the tower, you can still walk up there, a bit steep, but nice to see the old bells still in place. Right, let's crack on. actually, I've just spotted something. Regular visitors to Coastal Explorers will notice that hill behind. That's Signal Hill. And my videos in Sydney and Brisbane, and of course in Hong Kong, we do have 2 signal hills or equivalents in Hong Kong, and that would have been used up there to send messages to the ships in the harbour, telling them what time it is, but also letting them know if there's typhoons coming, anything like that. So it would have been a weather navigation. So there we go, signal hills. They are all over the world. And just on the edge of Signal Hill is this. It's the former governor's mansion. So let's go in, take a look and see what the grandest house would have looked like here in German Qingdao. This is the large meeting room, and in 1957, Chairman Mao actually chaired a Politburo communist meeting in this room back in 1957. Now walking through into the governor's bedroom here, we can see all the bedrooms had a fireplace in the corner. It does get bitterly cold here in Qingdao throughout the winter. And other famous people have actually stayed here, including Ho Chi Minh and the Prince Sihanouk of Cambodia, as well as many Communist Party officials over the years as well, would have used the house. Stunning, stunning bedroom with a gun cabinet in there. I'm not sure that would have been located in here back in the day. Walking around a home like this, it really makes you feel how at home, Heimat, as they say in German. People felt a home away from home. Just the architecture, the fixtures, the fittings, but the way of life here in Qingdao for them. There were clubs, gentlemen's clubs, there was sports, horse racing was big here. Polo actually was big for the Germans here. High society living. About 4,000 to 5,000 Germans living here, half of which were troops. So around 2,000 civilians living here. They live in a very comfortable lifestyle. Now when they first arrived, they brought German servants with them. But after a while, those German servants sort of changed. The hierarchy of life here in Qingdao was that the Europeans were at the top and the Chinese were at the bottom. And as a result of that, the German servants were treated very well outside of the workplace, and they actually started to refuse doing certain jobs because of this. So then later on, they were replaced by Chinese servants who did all of the labour in the house. But what a stunning place this is. Now we're down in the basement here, quite a spacious area. Get a feeling that this room here probably used for when the governor came back from a hunt or outside, he'd come in here and he'd wipe his shoes off and get himself ready. And then right next to it is probably the most important room in any German family. Of course, it's the wine and beer cellar here. Qingdao beer come into Qingdao in 1903. And right opposite, got this wonderful room that tells the story of the sewer system here in Qingdao. It's still famous today because it's still in use. And when the Germans arrived, they created this massive underground sewerage system to make sure when you flush the toilet, and apparently a guide told me yesterday that they had flushing toilets in Qingdao before Hong Kong. Is that true? Write in the comments below. But yeah, coming in here, it tells you all about the sewerage system of Qingdao. How marvellous. This really would have been a stunning place for a governor to live, with the beautiful manicured gardens and what would have been a perfect unobstructed view out to the bay there and the whole of the city to overlook. And we've made it to Badeguan, which is an old area. Look at this little portable beer machine here on the road. Could do with that now, a bit parched. This is Badeguan, as I said, and it's an old area mainly from the 1930s, so post-German era. But as you can see from the architecture, it's all in the old German design. Mainly prominent nationalists would have lived here in the 20s and 30s after the Japanese left. Now, people are asking, tell me about the trees, Luke. Well, I'm no dendrophile being a lover of trees, but I have done a bit of research to find out what trees are here in this area. And we have, let's have a little look, we have Chinese parasol trees, also known as plane trees or French phoenix trees. These were popular in Shanghai and Vietnam under the French. We also have ginkgo trees with their striking golden foliage. There we go. And finally, poplars, acacias and cedar trees, all here, providing welcome shade in the heat of the Shandong summer. As well as the tree-lined avenues here, the Germans also planted forests all around the city to create that park feeling, the sense of home. And one of the things that it was noticed that Germans missed from home was the smell of the forest, the smell of the trees. And in the early 1900s, the Germans brought over thousands of tree saplings and planted them here to create these wonderful inland parks and forests around the city for people to enjoy even today. One really good thing about Qingdao is this boardwalk that goes pretty much all the way along the front of the coast, and it's beautiful. You can see all the old buildings, the beaches, and we can see lots and lots of people. All day I've been seeing people having their wedding shots. We've got some down here on the rocks, two more groups up on the rocks up there, and there was some outside the church. So obviously a very, very popular spot to get married here, Qingdao. So this is beach number 1 here. I guess the Germans wanted it to be a tourist resort as well as a home away from home for the Germans. And they had all these beaches along here, and you can still see the distinct German style to some of the buildings, as well as a real Chinese mix. It's lovely to see everyone out. It's a bank holiday here in China, and we've got the old guys playing head tennis and frisbee, and the families enjoying the rock pools, looking for crabs, and the people just enjoying the beach in this October warmth. We're going to try and head to beach number 3, which is around the headland, for the end of the video, where we can hopefully see what Qingdao has now become. Let's go. And if you are coming to Qingdao, get yourself to the 3rd beach. We've made it, and we're here for the amazing light show. Yes, at 6:30 every night. The lights are turned on all the modern buildings in the city of Qingdao, and you have this amazing, spectacular show. Now, I was brought up going to Blackpool in the 1980s for my light show, but this takes it to a whole new level. Do get yourself to the 3rd beach here in Qingdao. So what's the legacy of this German period here in Qingdao? Well, you can see it in the architecture, of course. The yellow walls, the red roofs, they're all still a major tourist attraction. The brewery is one of the most visited museums in China. The efficient sewer systems that the Germans built, so well constructed, still in use today. But the legacy is more than just bricks and beer. Today, Qingdao is a thriving metropolis. Over 10 million people, a real powerhouse of the Chinese economy. It's one of the world's busiest ports, a major hub for international trade, and a leader in high-tech industries like AI and high-speed rail manufacturing. The city successfully blends its unique historical heritage with modern ambition. The legacy of a German Qingdao is therefore dual-natured. It's a memory of colonial imposition, but also a foundational layer in the identity of a dynamic Chinese city that has fully absorbed and transcended its past to become a leader in the 21st century. Thank you so much for joining me on this historic jaunt around Qingdao. I hope you've learnt a little bit about the German history. I'm heading north to Weihai to see the British legacy that they left behind when they leased the territory 2 hours northeast of here. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in Weihai. Bye for now.